For reasons that utterly escape everyone involved, you're listening to a bipolar, a schizophrenic, and a podcast. Here are your hosts, Gabe Howard and Michelle Hammer.
You're listening to a bipolar, a schizophrenic, and a podcast. My name is Gabe Howard, and I have bipolar.
Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm schizophrenic.
And we're going to talk about red flags. Basically,
But Gabe, you forgot to say what this is.
this is a podcast. I said that.
We know we didn't.
I did. I said this is a bipolar, schizophrenic, and a podcast.
I messed up.
But you know what I did forget to say, so I am glad that you brought it up. On March 30th, it is World Bipolar Day.
It is.
It is.
What a happy day or sad day. Oh, no.
I kind of look at it as a both day. Like I wake up sad, but I go to bed happy and kind of vacillate back and forth throughout the day.
Yeah, I know. There must be so many people that are happy or sad or in the middle or going up and down about how to feel on such a day.
So World Bipolar Day, it takes place on Van Gogh's birthday. And it really is, it's kind of weird to think about, but it's supposed to be like a celebration or an acknowledgement of bipolar disorder, the contributions of people who live with bipolar disorder. It's a day of awareness. It's a day of acknowledgement. It's a day of celebration. It can kind of be anything that you want. And it's really caught on in the last few years.
Do you set off fireworks?
Not intentionally. It's a really cool day, and I don't know if our listeners are familiar with it, but you can find information on it by Googling World Bipolar Day. You can also find more information on ibpf.org. It's the International Bipolar Foundation. They sort of spearheaded this, but it's been going on for a number of years. Michelle, is there a World Schizophrenia Day?
That's a good question. I don't really know.
If there's not, I'm getting an idea.
You're getting an idea?
We should spearhead World Schizophrenia Day.
Okay, let's do it.
We're just going to,
Just right now.
Just right now?
How about today?
Let's just cancel the podcast and just start our own holidays. It worked for Hallmark.
Let's just make different holidays every day, and then we never have to do anything because it's always a holiday.
This is genius.
Yeah. Holiday all day, every day.
Holiday all day, every day.
Yeah.
Excellent. It sounds a little bit like our lives, though, if you think about it.
A little bit.
Michelle, when we were going over the idea for this show, you said we should really talk about red flags of mental illness that we saw in ourselves before we were diagnosed. And we came up with really good ones that we're going to discuss. But I think that we should maybe open it up a little later on in the show to talk about warning signs that we have personally seen in others. So we've sort of got the personal experience, the lived experience, but maybe we should cover some just straight up warning signs. For example, if you are running naked down the street screaming that you're being followed by Osama bin Laden, you might be schizophrenic.
Yeah, I would say there's something really big is going on there. Or you could be on a lot of drugs, honestly, if you're really yelling that down the street.
It is interesting that you bring up the drug things because we know many people who were diagnosed with bipolar disorder or schizophrenia because they were abusing drugs and alcohol. And when they got clean, they realized that they didn't have mental illness at all, but they were having the hallucinatory, is that a word? Effects.
Sure.
Yeah, of the drugs. So it is kind of a messed up thing, isn't it?
Drugs or schizophrenia? Let's see. I guess so, sure.
And what if you genuinely have schizophrenia, but you are self-medicating with drugs?
Well, that sounds like fun.
Does it?
No.
I mean, we should probably put a little asterisk there that Gabe and Michelle are not advocating treating schizophrenia with drugs.
I would not advocate that. I wouldn't say treat schizophrenia with drugs. Not a good idea. A guy on Instagram just told me that I should try CBD oils with exercise to help. And I said, well, any kind of supplement or anything with exercise is always good. So thanks for the unsolicited advice, asshole.
Well, now wait a minute. Come on. We can't call our fans assholes.
No, I'm not saying he's an asshole, but I just don't need advice oh, you have schizophrenia? Have you tried CBD along with exercise? Okay. First of all, exercise is always really a healthy thing to do. CBD, sure, like any other supplement, could be beneficial or could do nothing. So I don't need somebody on Instagram telling me what to do to help my schizophrenia.
But isn't this why social media was created? So that we could stalk other people and tell them they were wrong?
Sure, but listen, if I want your advice on Instagram, I'll ask for it.
I remember my father when I was growing up. He's like, if I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. That was his motto.
Maybe you need some CBD and some exercise, Gabe.
Maybe I need some CBD.
Yeah, just take some CBD and do some exercise. You'll feel so much better. I heard it on Instagram today.
It is interesting, and I want to talk about something for the younger generation while we're on this vein. You know, I'm over 40, but I remember the exercise craze of the 90s, the early 90s. And there was all these supplements that came out, all of these pills that you could buy at the gas station, exactly like CBD oil. It's going to change your life. They're better. They're amazing. And if you take the pills exactly like they order you to do so, you will lose weight. That was the big thing. They were weight loss supplements. And I always laughed because they would say things like, okay, you have to take 4 pills a day, you know, morning, noon, evening, and night. You have to take it each with a gallon of water. So you're going to drink 4 gallons of water a day.
That's not healthy.
And maybe it wasn't a gallon, maybe it was half a gallon, but it was an extreme amount of water. You were supposed to take it with a lot of water. You were supposed to take the pills in supplement of dinner. So you weren't supposed to eat dinner at all. And they put on there that the pills worked best if you took a brisk 15-minute walk after each dosage.
So, take a pill, don't eat, drink lots of water, and take a walk.
Yeah.
And you will lose weight.
Yeah, and it's the pills. It's the magic pills.
Wow. Oh my goodness. That's wow.
So
I personally love the pills at the gas station that say that you get a huge boner.
Yeah. It does remind me of the boner pills.
Yeah, the boner pills. I love those. Okay, Gabe, are we like on a tangent right now? What were we talking about?
But it's
Red
a
flags.
good tangent. It is a good tangent because I think that there are many people who live with mental illness that think that they can take a magic pill that they bought at the gas station and they will live well. It's really odd to me because, you know, big pharma, pills are bad unless you buy it at the gas station.
Yeah, just go take some St. John's wort.
Well, you know, at least St. John's wort has some study behind it to show some efficacy for low-grade depression. Me and you, we do not have low-grade anything.
I took St. John's wort. It did nothing for me. Not against St. John's wort. I'm just saying personally, it was probably as helpful as CBD and exercise.
To tie this back together into something good, though, it is a red flag if you are constantly looking for sources outside of yourself to feel better.
Yes.
If your depression is so bad that you're willing to try something that you bought on the internet or advice that you got on Instagram or something at the gas station, if you are desperately looking for a cure, it is a pretty good indication that you're acknowledging that you're suffering from something. Because people who are healthy and happy don't just buy random products and ingest them for no reason.
It's a very good point.
I'm good at that. I do that.
Oh, you do that a lot, Gabe?
Michelle, what were some red flags that people saw in you before you noticed that anything was wrong?
Well, the hugest red flag was that I was constantly talking to myself and I didn't even realize I was talking to myself or just laughing at myself. I remember my mother speaking to like high school teachers or middle school teachers, and they said, your teachers are saying that you're laughing at them. They're saying that you're laughing in class. And I'm like, I'm not laughing in class. I was going into delusions and hilariously laughing at my delusions and just laughing in class, which had nothing to do with the class or anything I was learning about. I was just off in like another land laughing hysterically. But I didn't realize I was doing it, and I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know why. I had no memories of myself laughing during class to even try to defend myself. And I would say, I wasn't laughing during class. But there you go, right there was a huge red flag. The only time I remember specifically doing that was like 11th grade physics. I'm sitting in the back of class, and I guess I was just laughing so hysterically over and over again, not noticing that a girl 2 seats ahead of me turned around and goes, "Hey, are you okay?" And that's when I realized. I stopped and I go, oh, sorry, I was just laughing at something. She goes, "What were you laughing at?" I'm like, I think I was just thinking of something funny. I don't know. And that's like the first time I noticed that I actually was just completely bursting into laughter at nothing around me, only what was in my head.
Wow. I think it's interesting that you brought up that you were laughing at things that were in your head. You weren't aware of anything that was happening around you. And the teachers and fellow students thought that you were like mocking them.
Yeah.
So now you've got 2 problems. You've obviously got the delusions, the laughter, the lack of self-awareness, and you've managed to piss off people that you weren't even aware were in the room.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that makes it really, really difficult to get treatment, because nobody thought that you needed treatment, but they did think you needed punishment.
Right. Actually, this just reminds me is in college, I would sit I had my computer with me, and I would sit in the back of the class with my computer, and the room would often be dark, but the computer lights up my face. And I guess I would laugh a lot while I was, also being delusional in class. I would just look at my computer, I would laugh, I would kind of take notes. But one time I went up to the teacher after class, and I said something to him, and he goes, "Oh, by the way, I see you laughing a lot during class. Are you laughing at, like, what you're looking at on your computer, or, like, at what I'm saying?" And I go, "Oh, no, I just do that a lot." So there I was doing it again in college, just bursting into laughter, being delusional at nothing. My whole life I've been doing it, and I still didn't know I had schizophrenia.
This is interesting because I think that people need to understand that the worst case scenario is that people think you're a jerk because you're laughing at them. But what if the thing that you were doing was yelling and screaming? What if you were like posturing in like a defensive thing and like raising your fist? You're a tiny little girl, Michelle, but I'm a 300-pound, 6'3" man. Imagine if I was completely unaware that I was in a room and I would stand up and I would start yelling, "Get off me!" That's the kind of thing that can get you tackled, hurt, beat up, shot, arrested, because it's scary. It's scary. You're kind of telling the story like, hey, it's a big red flag because you were laughing in class, but nobody's going to tackle and have you arrested because you're laughing. Worst case scenario is they're going to ask you to leave. But a lot of people in our community, their delusions don't revolve around things that make them laugh. Their delusions revolve around things that make them defensive or appear angry, or it's scary. And I understand why it would be scary. If I stood up and started screaming at you, I wouldn't want you to wonder whether or not I'm having a delusion. I would want you to run. So I'm telling you that if I'm sick, run. Well, that means you're not helping me, but you really can't risk it. I'm 150 pounds bigger than you.
1 second, we're going to commercial.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp.com. Secure, convenient, and affordable online counseling. All counselors are licensed, accredited professionals. Anything you share is confidential. Schedule secure video or phone sessions, plus chat and text with your therapist whenever you feel it's needed. A month of online therapy often costs less than a single traditional face-to-face session. Go to BetterHelp.com/PsychCentral and experience 7 days of free therapy to see if online counseling is right for you. BetterHelp.com/PsychCentral.
And we're back talking about red flags. Did you have any huge red flags?
Oh man, I had so many red flags. The biggest one that I've talked about on this show before is that I thought about suicide every day as far back as I can remember. I didn't think it was odd at all.
Like how far back?
Like when I was 4, 3, I don't know. I never remember not thinking about it. And I think that kind of blows people's minds. Do you remember on another episode that you said that you didn't tell anybody that you were paranoid because after all, you were paranoid?
Right.
And it's the way that you always felt, and it felt normal to you. The paranoia seemed very protecting, so you weren't doing anything to try to fix it. You were steering right into that curve of paranoia.
I believed it. I thought it was right. Therefore, I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want to go against it because I didn't want it to get worse. You know, if you don't listen to your paranoia, it's only going to get worse because you're going to get more paranoid.
Right. And the reason that you believed it is because it was just always with you.
Right.
Right. That's how suicidal thoughts were to me. They were just always with me. And I just assumed that everybody else was thinking about suicide as well. I'm not saying that I thought that everybody was going to die by suicide because that would be nuts. I thought that everybody was considering it. Just like I know that everybody can eat pizza. I just do. Pizza is something that's readily available. It's relatively inexpensive. So when I see people not eating pizza, I assume to myself that the reason they're not eating pizza isn't because it's unavailable to them, but it's because they don't want it. So when I see people not committing suicide, not dying by suicide, or not self-harming themselves, I just assumed it was because they didn't want to. Not because they weren't thinking about it, or not because they were emotionally healthy. I just thought they were making a choice that was different from mine. But I sure as hell thought they were contemplating it. I did. I thought my parents would go to bed at night and think, I wonder if we should kill ourselves tonight. Nah, we'll stick it out with the kids. That's just what I thought.
I get that. When I was in high school and I had those behavioral issues, every time I was brought to any kind of guidance counselor or any kind of therapist or anything, they'd say, everything is between you and me unless you're thinking of hurting yourself or somebody else. So right at that moment, I wouldn't say anything because I was thinking of hurting myself. I was suicidal. So therefore, I never got any help because I never opened my mouth. But yet I didn't think of that as a red flag because if it was that big a deal that they were going to tell my mom that I was thinking of hurting myself, that should have been oh, it's such a big deal that they would tell my mom. That is such a big red flag right there. I was thinking, oh no, don't say a word. They'll tell my mom. I should just be quiet because I don't want her to know. When really, that's something she should have known about because that's really important to get fixed.
Along that same line, it never occurred to me that anything was wrong with this because there was no mental health training. If my parents would have sat me down one day, and I know this is kind of a messed up thing to say, but if they would have sat me down one day and said, Gabe, thinking about suicide is abnormal, I would have been like, really? That really? But they didn't, we never had those conversations because my parents didn't see any value in it, which is, I love my mom and dad. I want to make that very, very clear. My mom and dad are not bad people. It never occurred to them that their child was thinking about killing himself, because if it would have occurred to them, they'd have done something. We just believed all the bullshit about mental illness that most people believe. My parents were like, he's smart. He gets average grades. He's funny. He's a good kid and he comes from a good family and we're all good people. So clearly suicide isn't an issue. He's not mentally ill. But my mother to this very day says that she always described me as her Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kid. And I always point out when she says that, you're describing bipolar disorder. So my mother recognized that I had the symptoms of bipolar disorder as a teenager, but she never was able to put it together any further. And that scares me because that's a giant red flag that everybody I knew missed, even though they were all sitting around talking about it.
I don't know. For a while, I was trying to tell everybody that I couldn't sleep at night. I can't sleep at night. I can't sleep at night. And I was just told, you're not getting sleeping pills. Stop trying to get sleeping pills. I don't want sleeping pills. What do you want? I want to sleep at night.
That's interesting because I too had trouble sleeping and my parents had a billion reasons that it was my fault. You drink too much Mountain Dew, you're too hyper, you're watching too much television, you don't get enough exercise, or my personal favorite one, try harder.
Right.
Yeah, I can't sleep, try harder.
And the sleeping was like the hardest thing because going to try to fall asleep was when the paranoia was almost at its worst because it would go through my entire day and everything I did that day, and it would tell me how everything I did that day was the most horrible thing I could have done, and then I would get delusional and believe that things happened that day that never happened and making it even worse than it was, and things that I didn't believe were true happened, and then paranoia, it was just went all this crazy kind of who knows, is making up all this nonsense in my head, and I would cry myself to sleep every night. And all I would say was, I just want to sleep. Please, I just want to sleep. You're not getting sleeping pills.
When I said that I couldn't sleep, nobody told me that I couldn't have sleeping pills. The advantage, I guess, of being 14 years older than you is that apparently sleeping pills just weren't a thing in my generation.
It's not that I wanted sleeping pills.
No, I know that it's not, but nobody even thought that, when I said I couldn't sleep, nobody thought that I was sleeping pills seeking.
Yeah, everyone was like, yeah, you're drug. They thought I was drug seeking.
Yeah, that's bizarre.
Yeah.
Nobody ever accused me of drug seeking by saying that I couldn't sleep, but they didn't think it was a problem either. And everybody thought it was my own fault. Frankly, they blamed it on caffeine or my poor eating habits or I needed more exercise. There was always some reason that these things weren't my fault. We've talked a lot about being kids. We've talked a lot about like our teenage years when we were under our parents' control, and maybe you were diagnosed sooner than me, but what were some warning signs for you as an adult? Like what was adult Michelle warning signs?
Like adult Michelle, considering college as well?
Yeah. I mean,
when
you were a grown-ass woman.
Well, there would be times I'd be in my room in college. Then I would just hear my other roommate, Kate, just yelling, "Who are you talking to? Who are you talking to?" And I'd be like, "What? What are you talking about?" She goes, "I hear you speaking to somebody." I'm like, "Oh, I was just working something out in my head. I was just working stuff out." But then other times I'd actually be on the phone and she'd yell, "Who are you talking to?" I'd be like, "I'm on the phone, Kate, leave me alone." But this would happen so often. And then other times my friend, like Wendy, she'd just be like, "You're schizophrenic." And I'd be like, "No, I'm not schizophrenic. That's voices outside your head, not inside your head." And they're like, "Are you sure about that?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm definitely not schizophrenic, guys. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'm not schizophrenic." So that's why when I told them I was, they were like, "Yeah, no shit. We told you that."
Yeah, that's...
They knew. They knew way before me. So when I told them, it was like telling them that I have brown hair. Like, we know. We already knew this about you. What What are you even trying to tell us? Like, you're telling us nothing.
That's always a fascinating part of your story to me. You know, every time it comes up or we discuss it, this idea that a lot of people around you knew that something was wrong, yet they weren't actively seeking help for you. They were telling you, which is a step in the right direction, and you were ignoring them. And the reason that you were ignoring them was not like people think. You weren't ignoring them because you were schizophrenic. You were ignoring them because you didn't understand. You didn't agree with them. You didn't see it yourself. You had no self-awareness, which I suppose people can argue was because of schizophrenia, but I think it's a mixture. I'm sure that being schizophrenic probably played a role, but I think having no understanding of how mental illness works, its symptoms, its causes, or what to do about it, made it easy for you to skip.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I was diagnosed as bipolar, so I thought I was just bipolar, but then I kind of knew that those symptoms didn't fit. Whenever I Googled the symptoms, I was like, I really don't have this, but I might have something worse, but I don't want to look it up what's worse, and I don't want to believe other people, so I'm just going to say that I'm bipolar and leave it at that.
It's fascinating to me. You've said this before, and I never know, like, how to respond to it because you're like,
because is one really worse?
Well, yeah, you're like just bipolar. It's kind of a bit like saying, well, I just have testicular cancer. I mean, I don't have lung cancer, just testicular cancer.
I know. I was like, this, I just stigmatized myself in that. I was like, no,
I think you stigmatized me.
I just a little bit.
I'm very sad that you would do this to me.
Oh,
and just wow. Make sure you use person first language the next time you stigmatize me. That'll make it all go away.
Totally.
Michelle, you and I, we had a lot of signs, and just anybody listening to this show should know that the warning signs for both Michelle and I were like spotlights, and nobody really picked up on them. I mean, our parents didn't do nothing. They made attempts to get us help here and there, but it wasn't the concentrated effort that it needed to be because they didn't know what to do. Outside of the symptoms that we have and that we've kind of discussed on the show, let's talk about some other really big symptoms that we've heard about other people having. Common ones that people hear about, like, for example, not being able to go to work for several days in a row, but not physically ill and not understanding why you can't get out of bed. That's kind of happened to us in a way, but...
just not being able to get out of bed because you're so depressed.
Yeah. We've certainly been there, but kind of gone back and forth. But I think by the time we were there, we probably knew we were mentally ill. So it's not necessarily a red flag before diagnosis, but rather an ongoing problem that we suffered from. But losing interest in things that you used to have interest in is a big red flag. You know, giving away prized possessions is a big red flag. Pulling away from friends and relatives that you were close to is a big red flag. And while some of those things happened to us and some of those things didn't, any of those things alone are cause for concern. And, you know, maybe you should get a mental health checkup, whether you go to your general practitioner, whether you go to a social worker or a psychologist, or whether you go straight for a psychiatrist. I'm really always bummed when people say, you know, I thought maybe there was something wrong, but it didn't seem serious enough. You know, we live in a country that goes to the doctor for the sniffles, and I'm okay with that. Like, I don't think that's a bad thing. So if you think that you might have a mental health problem, why not go get it checked out?
I have a friend that I hadn't seen her in a while, and I saw her about last weekend, and I'm talking to her. She's struggling with things, and she's going, I think I'm going to go get some therapy. I think I'll get therapy. And I just said to her, you know, you're saying that like not everybody goes to therapy. Everyone goes to therapy. It is incredibly common to go to therapy. And I'm trying to explain to her that her thinking that therapy is like so taboo and that she's going to go because, and she's like kind of almost seemed ashamed of it, that she could possibly be going to therapy and it's such a bad thing and that she thinks she needs it. And I'm just telling her, everybody goes to therapy. Everybody does it. There's no shame. If you ask 10 people and ask them who's been to therapy, at least half the people are going to raise their hand. There's no shame in going to therapy. If you think you have to go to therapy, don't make a huge deal about it. Just go.
It's fascinating to see how therapy has sort of evolved from the generations. Like, my grandfather is 88 years old and he's like, therapy is bullshit. Nobody should go, be a man. You know, my dad's in his 60s and he went to therapy, but he wouldn't tell anybody. Like, my mom knew and none of us kids could know. And he's going to hear this episode and he's going to be like, why are you telling people that? And then there's my generation. You know, I'm in my 40s. I'll go and I'll tell my friends and family, but that's it. And then there's the 20-year-olds that are like live streaming therapy on Facebook, checking in with their therapist. They're just like, what do you mean you don't have a therapist? But that is good. That is good to see the evolution of it because it's a valuable thing. It matters in our society. And if you want to know the biggest red flag that everybody should respond to, if you think there might be something wrong, that's a red flag. If your friends are coming to you and telling you there might be something wrong, that's a red flag. Don't look for the giant ones. Pay attention to the small ones because like all other illnesses, early treatment is key. Thanks again for spending this week with a bipolar, a schizophrenic, and a podcast. Remember to share, like, subscribe, make Michelle and I famous. And if you get a chance, hop over to GabeHoward.com and buy my book, Mental Illness is an Asshole. And of course, I have to be fair. So head over to schizophrenic.nyc and buy a shirt. You can also go to store.psychcentral.com and buy the Define Normal shirt. They are almost out of stock, and I'm not sure we're going to be ordering more. We will see everybody next week.
Red flag.
You've been listening to a bipolar, a schizophrenic, and a podcast. If you love this episode, don't keep it to yourself. Head over to iTunes or your preferred podcast app to subscribe, rate, and review. To work with Gabe, go to GabeHoward.com. To work with Michelle, go to schizophrenic.nyc. For free mental health resources and online support groups, head over to psychcentral.com. The show's official website is psychcentral.com/BSP. You can email us at show@psychcentral.com. Thank you for listening and share widely.